Most men think their problem is confidence. It's not. It's reaction. Because the moment you react too much, you lose control. Not loudly, not instantly, but subtly. And that subtle loss is enough. Watch closely in any interaction. A man hears something he doesn't like and responds immediately. Someone challenges him, and he jumps to defend himself. He feels tension and rushes to fix it. It happens fast, almost automatic. And that's the problem, because the faster you react, the easier you are to control. Think about it. If someone can predict your reaction, they don't need to understand you. They just need to trigger you, say the right thing, apply a little pressure, create a bit of tension, and you'll respond exactly how they expect. That's not control. That's programming. Most men are running on it without realizing. They think they're expressing themselves, but what they're really doing is revealing themselves. Every reaction shows something. What bothers you? What affects you? What you can't ignore? And once that's visible, it becomes a lever. People don't need to overpower you. They just need to press the right point. That's why reactive men always feel like they're in battles, always explaining, always defending, always trying to fix how they're perceived, because they're constantly responding instead of choosing. Now compare that to a man who doesn't react instantly. He pauses, not out of hesitation, but out of control. He hears the same thing, feels the same tension, but doesn't move immediately. And that pause changes everything, because now he's not predictable. He's not automatic. He's not easy to pull. And when you're not easy to pull, you become harder to control. That's where power begins. Not in what you say, but in what you don't respond to. Most men don't realize how often they react, because to them, it feels normal. Someone says something slightly disrespectful. They respond immediately. Someone disagrees. They start explaining. Someone creates tension. They try to resolve it. All of it feels justified. But that's exactly why it's dangerous, because when something feels automatic, you're not in control of it. You're controlled by it. And reaction is one of the fastest ways to lose your position. Not because reacting is always wrong, but because uncontrolled reaction is predictable. And predictability is what people use. If someone knows you'll defend yourself every time, they'll challenge you more. If someone knows you'll react emotionally, they'll push you further. If someone knows you can't sit in silence, they'll use it against you, not aggressively, but strategically, because they've already figured you out. That's the part most men miss. You think you're responding, but you're being read. Your reactions are patterns, and patterns are easy to map. That's why reactive men are always one step behind. They don't lead the interaction, they follow it. Something happens leads to they respond. Something is said leads to they react. There's no space, no control, no decision, just movement. And movement without control is weakness. Now look at a man who operates differently. He doesn't react to everything. He doesn't feel the need to respond instantly. He lets things sit, not because he's unsure, but because he's not controlled by the moment. That's the difference. Most men are pulled into interactions. He stays outside of them until he chooses to step in. And that choice creates power. Because now, his responses are not automatic. They are deliberate. And deliberate behavior is hard to manipulate. When you don't react immediately, people lose their leverage. They don't know how to move you. They don't know what will trigger you. They don't know how far they can go, so they hesitate. They slow down. They become more careful. That's the shift. Not louder, not more aggressive, just less reactive. Because the less you react, the less people can control you. At some point, this stops being about reactions. It becomes about what controls you, because every reaction has a source. And most men never look at it. They think, I just reacted. But the real question is, why did you need to react? What inside you couldn't stay still? Was it ego? The need to be right? The need to be respected? Immediately? Because that's where the real problem is. Not in the reaction itself, but in the dependency behind it. A man hears something that challenges him, and he reacts. Not because it matters, but because it touched something. A man gets ignored, and he reacts. Not because the situation requires it, but because he feels it. And that feeling becomes action. That's the chain. Trigger to emotion to reaction. And most men live inside it. Automatically, without interruption, but the man with control breaks that chain. Not by suppressing emotion, but by not being owned by it. He feels it, but he doesn't move with it. And that creates distance. Distance between what happens and what he does. That distance is everything. Because inside that space, there's choice. Most men don't have that space. They react inside the moment. They speak inside the emotion. They move inside the pressure. And that makes them predictable. Now look at a man who has space. Something happens, and nothing changes immediately. No shift in posture, no rush to speak, no need to respond, just stillness. And that stillness creates weight, because now people feel that they didn't move him, and that changes the dynamic. They expected a reaction, and didn't get one. They expected emotion, and got nothing. They expected movement, and got control. And when expectations break, people pay attention. That's where power starts to build. Not from what you say, but from what you refuse to react to. Because the less things move you, the less people can control you. And the less people can control you, the more they adjust. At the highest level, this is not about reactions anymore. It's about control over self. Because the man who reacts too much is not choosing his actions. He's being moved by them. And the moment you are being moved, you are no longer in control. That's the shift most men never make. They try to react better. They try to control their emotions. They try to say the right thing. But they're still inside the same loop. Still responding, still adjusting, still being pulled by what happens around them. And that's why nothing really changes. Because the problem was never how you react. It's that you feel the need to react at all. Now here's the difference. The man who lacks control feels pressure and responds. The man with control feels pressure and remains still. Not because he's forcing it, but because he doesn't need to move. That's the real power. No urgency, no rush to defend, no need to correct everything. Just stillness. And that stillness creates something most men never develop. Wait. Because when you don't react, people feel it. They expected something, a response, an emotion, a reaction. And when it doesn't come, the dynamic shifts. Now they start adjusting, they start questioning, they start thinking twice before speaking. They start watching you more closely, because now you're not predictable. You're not easy to move. You're not giving them anything to work with. And that's where control is established. Quietly, without force, without explanation. Just through the absence of unnecessary reaction. Now here's the truth most men avoid. If everything affects you, everything controls you. Every word, every look, every situation. You become dependent on what happens around you, and dependence is the opposite of power. But the moment fewer things affect you, fewer things control you. You stop reacting to everything. You stop responding to every signal. You stop engaging in every moment. And in that reduction, your presence becomes stronger, cleaner, more stable, because now you're not part of the noise. You're above it. Not reacting, not chasing, not adjusting, just choosing. And in a world where most men are constantly reacting, the one who doesn't becomes impossible to control. Because in the end, men who react too much lose control without noticing. But the man who chooses when to respond controls everything.